Well, it's time right now to say hello to a man who is a hero of mine and many of you as well. He's a passionate advocate for mental health and addiction recovery. A Seattle native, fourth-generation Washingtonian, he has served King County residents for over 22 years as a state representative, a state senator, and for 4 terms as a King County council member. In 2009, he became our county executive and is now serving in his 3rd term. As executive, he leads one of the largest regional governments in the United States. He led the county's efforts to enroll 200,000 uninsured residents in affordable health care. He convened local experts to tackle 2 of the most challenging problems that we face in our community and our entire region, and that's heroin and opiate addiction and homelessness. And these efforts, by the way, are opening doors to housing and treatment for many people in need. He has been a true and trusted friend to those in recovery from mental illness and addiction. He remains focused on one primary goal: building equity and opportunity for all county residents and communities. Most importantly, he's a true champion of recovery. Please join me in welcoming King County Executive Dow Constantine. Woohoo!
Thank you so much, Neil, and thank you for everything that you do to promote recovery for people, not just locally, but across this nation. It is an invaluable service. To Lauren and Bill, welcome. So excited. So excited. I remember being a freshman, a representative-elect for the state legislature, and you immediately get to go to lots of meetings, but not vote on anything. It's so great. Congratulations. Good evening, and welcome to all of our state legislators, our extraordinary service providers, our community partners. Welcome to those in recovery and to friends and family as well, and thank you, all of you, for being here. King County government has been responsible for coordinating publicly funded mental health and substance use services for our region for a full 30 years now. It is a responsibility that we take very seriously, and we have focused on finding ways to improve access to treatment for those who are most in need, and to ensuring as well the best quality of care for our residents. We count on these legislators, on the state legislature, to fund behavioral health services. Over the years, King County has worked to increase our local resources as well, though, to address behavioral health needs in our community. We adopted, our county council Chair McDermott adopted the Mental Illness and Drug Dependency Fund. Our voters approved 3 times now the Veterans and Human Services levy, and this last time added seniors as an important constituency to be served by that levy. And in 2015, the voters overwhelmingly adopted Best Starts for Kids to make sure every child in this county can get off to a healthy start in life. At the same time, we've not tried to walk this path alone. We have worked to build partnerships with community organizations and philanthropies like the United Way of King County, Balmer Group, the Rakes Foundation, the Medina Foundation, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and many more. Together, we're investing more than $100 million in local resources to strengthen our behavioral health response for King County residents, to expand same-day access to treatment, and to create more detox and treatment beds countywide. Moving forward with recommendations from the Heroin and Prescription Opiate Addiction Task Force that Neil mentioned, we are increasing access to medication-assisted treatment so that we make it more available when and where people need it. We're working to fund programs and services that connect people not just to treatment, but also to health care, to housing, to education, to employment, to the things they need to be able to be self-sufficient. We're helping children and youth get on and stay on a healthy path to adulthood, and we are connecting people not just to programs or services or resources, but to community. It is one of the many reasons King County embraced the Affordable Care Act. The Affordable Care Act has helped us, as was mentioned, enroll 200,000 of you, of King County residents, in real health care. I mean, what does that mean to the ability of someone to get past the hurdles in life and fulfill their potential? Well, I am proud to say that this has been an overwhelming success. 6 years in, 98% of King County children have health insurance. Yes. I challenge you to find any jurisdiction of our size in this country that has a better record than that. And 92% of working age adults are now covered by health insurance. Our state legislators, these people sitting here, are with us. They embraced Medicaid expansion. They opened doors to treatment for thousands of people with mental health challenges and addictions. And we continue to champion enrollment, even though the Trump administration has shrunk the enrollment period down to a tiny window of 6 weeks, trying to exclude people from health care. We are out in the field right now with many of you as our partners, fighting to make sure that every single person who qualifies can get signed up for health care. In King County and across the state, we are standing on the threshold of a major change as well in how we deliver services. The integration of physical health and behavioral health into one coordinated system of care. Our state legislature mandated this change, and it is a good one for one very simple reason: the mind and the body are connected. Beginning on January 1st of this next year, King County, along with our managed care partners and our strong King County provider network, will move forward as one coordinated care system. Our goal is a holistic approach, one that responds to the individual needs of every person and continues to remove the barriers to care for every resident. To do that is going to take partnerships, it's going to take collaboration, and, my friends, it is also going to take funding. For many years, during and immediately following the long recession, state funding for behavioral health suffered deep cuts, along with a lot of other important state priorities. But the good news is that because of the people sitting in front of you right here, leaving aside you two who just got elected, we see that trend. Well, actually, you helped with this too, didn't you? We see that trend moving in the other direction, moving in a positive direction. More funding in the last session to support mental health and addiction treatment and housing and help for those who find themselves homeless. A gap more than a decade in the making is not going to be reversed in a single legislative session, of course. But progress is being made, and we should all be tremendously grateful to our legislators for taking this challenge seriously. Now, all of us at King County, and I personally, am committed to working with you in the months ahead as we continue to tackle the really difficult challenges of poverty and addiction and homelessness. This forum tonight will give you information on our legislative priorities for next year. And we hope you will join us in really trying to achieve those important goals. But tonight is also, it's not just about this serious business, it's an opportunity to celebrate. We should be celebrating because you're going to hear from individuals and families who have traveled the personal path to recovery. Their message is simple. Prevention works, treatment is effective, people recover. So I look forward to working with you, all of you, and these legislators in the months ahead as we support our neighbors, as we support our friends, as we support our brothers and sisters on their path to recovery. Thank you for being part of the solution. Thanks, you guys.
Thank you very much, Executive Constantine. Next, we're going to hear some reflections from a group of young people who create video projects to explore and promote mental health recovery.
I think Asian Americans can deal with depression or feel depression in different ways. What does the API community feel like they need in order to foster resilience, in order to transform trauma into healing?
To me, growing up, I didn't think anybody would care about how I felt or understand what was going on in my situation.
I've been depressed ever since I was a very, very young kid. I just would feel really sad all the time, and it wasn't a sad that really made sense because it wasn't really connected to anything.
I didn't want to share with anybody, not my family, really not my family, because my parents would say they went through way worse.
They would say like why are you so sensitive and stop being a crybaby.
They might have said something like, oh, you're not depressed, or you don't have any reason to be.
Having access to mental health services in my life has been, game-changing. Finding out that there's people out there that can help and talk to you about what's going on makes me feel so appreciative and thankful for each and every one of them.
When I had counseling, I can be free to share out what's gonna happen, blow all my steam or everything out, and they help me through it. They listen, they give you suggestions and tips.
It's important to have the talk about mental health, not only among the youth, but also with the older generations. Not only learn how to talk with them, but how to approach it.
How I would vision recovering. I'm depressed. I just want it to be a small detail of my life. I don't want it to take over my life.
I guess recovery, to me, it looks like hanging out with other people that you feel safe around and comfortable with, like friends, and you feel open to tell them anything.
It's okay to be sensitive, and it's okay to be open about your feelings, and don't be afraid about sharing how you feel to other people. It's depression is very common.
I'm doing this because mental health is really important to me, to all my friends, because when you're young, you don't really know how to deal with it. You might think you know how, but maybe you actually don't.
Recovery from depression for everyone is different looking, but I think just accepting it and knowing how to battle it really is the end goal.
Thanks to all the young people in the video who told their stories, and many of them are here with us tonight, exhibiting courage, strength, and hope. Our next speaker is my friend Jim Volenroff. He's your friend as well. Jim's the director of the King County Behavioral Health and Recovery Division, which is responsible for the delivery of mental health and substance use prevention and treatment services for the low-income and Medicaid population here in King County. Jim identifies as a person living in long-term recovery. He's a very courageous man. Let's welcome our friend Jim Volenroff.
All right, I'm already going to go off script, so Chris, bear with me for just a moment. So my name is Jim, and I am a proud member of the recovery community of King County. Last year, I tried something brand new, and it seemed to work, and I'm going to try it again. I'd like for anybody who identifies themselves as a member of the recovery community to, if you choose to please stand and be recognized. So if you identify as a recovery, please stand. Ladies and gentlemen, this is why we are here tonight. And thank you all for being here. It's amazing. We have an amazing recovery community here in King County. So I'd like to add my own welcome on behalf of the entire team at King County. Thank you for being here tonight. I'd also like to take the time, if I can find him, to introduce you to the new director of the Department of Community and Human Services, Leo Flor. So Leo is waving in the back. Please join me in welcoming Leo and congratulating him on his new appointment. The department is in good hands under Leo's leadership, and I look forward to seeing it thrive. Thank you to our policymakers. Thank you to all of you in recovery and so many of our community partners who are here tonight. We're continuing our work to integrate healthcare services so that when someone shows up at a doctor's appointment or at a behavioral health provider organization, that person can get all of their healthcare needs met in one visit, whether it's primary care, substance abuse, or mental health. This is important work, and we can only be successful if we tackle this work together and address the following urgent escalating challenges that face the state's healthcare system. First of all, there continues to be an alarming number of individuals who are dying by suicide and by overdose in this community. We continue to struggle at the state hospital to get people in the state hospital and then to get people out of the state hospital in a timely manner. And this stagnant system impacts our ability at the local level by filling up our local hospitals with people who we can't get into these facilities. We also have a behavioral health workforce shortage that continues to worsen. Caseloads are too high, and that impacts the quality of care. So those are some of the things that we need to continue to address. We must act now, and we must act with a certain urgency. Together with our elected officials, we have a chance to make this next session a banner year for recovery. Thank you. I'd like to briefly outline the legislative priorities that will help us achieve our goal. First, we must build on the work to strengthen the behavioral health services in our own community. The legislature has helped generate more Medicaid funding for behavioral health, and this is so important, and we are so grateful for the legislature's work. We need to stay the course, and we need to continue to find ways to maximize Medicaid through our state plan and through other strategies. We also need to fully fund prevention and community outpatient treatment and crisis services with adequate rates if we are to reduce our reliance on costly hospitalization and increase access to care. Second, we must continue to invest in community-based capacity to prevent and shorten hospitalization. This includes creating more capacity in the community to meet people's needs in both medical and behavioral health. We need transition options to help get people out of hospitals quickly, and we need low-barrier housing with support. In King County, we are hopeful that we will receive the support to add 100 new supportive beds here in our community to serve as step-down transitional housing for people exiting or diverting from hospitals. Earlier this year, the governor announced a plan to move the civil commitment community from Western State Hospital back to the community. We support the governor's plan to create this local capacity for those on civil commitment. However, for this transition to be successful, broader community input and planning is needed, and most importantly, we must include people with lived experience in the planning process. Third, we need to continue responding to the opioid epidemic and explore options that at first glance may seem counterintuitive. We need to invest in comprehensive regional opioid strategies like expanding medication-assisted treatment, improving emergency response, and disseminating more overdose reversal medication. We also have two federal priorities that I just briefly want to mention. Our number one priority, which Executive Constantine already talked briefly about, is to preserve access to health care by supporting the Affordable Care Act. We all deserve access to quality, timely, and affordable care. Finally, as we continue to work on integrating physical and behavioral health care, we need to update outdated federal laws regarding substance abuse confidentiality and align them with federal HIPAA regulations so that we can coordinate care better. As many of you know, this is a bittersweet day for me. Today is my last day as the director of the King County Behavioral Health and Recovery Division. It's a position that I've held for nearly 5 years. I'll start a new position in January as the director of the Behavioral Health Institute with the University of Washington and Harborview Medical Center. I couldn't be more excited about this transition. It was a difficult decision to make, but I'm honored and excited. The move will allow me to remain connected to the work in advancing behavioral health, not only in King County, but beyond. My 16 years in this particular position has been the job of a lifetime, and I'll forever be grateful. It's been a great honor. I'm pleased to let you know, however, that the division is in great hands. I'm proud to let you know that Kelly Nomura, who is the Assistant Division Director, has been named as the Interim Director of the Behavioral Health and Recovery Division. Kelly is an accomplished leader who I've worked with in different capacities for over 16 years. She's committed, she's talented, I know firsthand that she's hardworking, and I am proud to know her. So please join me in congratulating Kelly on her appointment and welcoming her to the stage to introduce our next speaker. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim, I'm so pleased you're here tonight to lead us through another informative and inspiring forum. I want to personally thank you for your leadership as the Director of the Behavioral Health and Recovery Division over the last 5 years. Your contributions have been many, but I think one that I most admire is your strong and consistent message, both through your words and your actions, to support a recovery-oriented system of care. Those we serve and the system, our system as a whole, has benefited greatly from your commitment to recovery. I thank you, we applaud you. And thank you all for being here tonight. As Jim mentioned in his remarks a few minutes ago, we must jointly tackle the challenges facing the state and the county's behavioral health system of care. I look forward to collaborating with all of you. Individuals in recovery, policymakers, our elected officials, the providers in our network, family members, advocates, and community members. I look forward to working with all of you as we unite in our efforts to improve behavioral health across all of King County. Thank you. And now I'd like to have you join me in welcoming our next speaker, Lisa Early, who's going to share her recovery journey with all of us tonight. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lisa Early. When I was 22 years old, I lived in Seattle with my two beautiful girls. We enjoyed playing Barbies together and taking cross-country road trips. I was a student at Seattle University pursuing a degree in English literature. Then, seemingly out of nowhere, I started hearing voices. People calling my name, derogatory statements. These voices were frightening. I had no idea where they were coming from. In time, my voices were joined by visions. For me, that meant seeing people that no one else could see. My mind was jumbled, and it was hard to think straight. On top of it all, I was in constant fear that someone would find out what was happening. I began to experience paranoia. I believed that my home had cameras throughout, and someone on the other end could see my every move. I began withdrawing from my life. I didn't want to talk to friends or family. I didn't want to go outside. I stopped attending classes. I had a part-time job, and I quit that too. Then it got worse. I could no longer take care of myself or my kids. My mom stepped in and took care of all of us. A week later, I was admitted to the psychiatric ward at Overlake Hospital and diagnosed with schizophrenia. I wish I could say that was my only hospitalization. It was one of many, about 200 days in total. My mom visited me every day. She held me while I cried and brought me little gifts. The greatest thing she did was encourage me to believe that I could get better. Once I was released from Overlake, I got connected to Highline Mental Health, which later became NAVOS. My case manager helped me learn coping skills and mindfulness, and I was surrounded by peers who were struggling but kept pushing forward anyway, despite having a serious mental health issue. I had only 3 credits to go before I could graduate from Seattle University. Mom came to class with me. If I started hearing voices or seeing things, we would leave class early. With my mom's support, I missed only 1 class that quarter, and I finished my degree. I still hear voices, and I see things that other people can't, but I have a toolbox of coping strategies to combat those symptoms. I have a great doctor and a strong support system that accepts me for who I am. When my mom passed away about 6 years ago, it was rough. However, Mom left 2 powerful supporters behind me, my daughters Tiffany and Courtney. They know when I've been isolating, when I haven't been sleeping, when I haven't been eating. They deliver groceries when I'm not up to going out, and they listen to me cry when I'm overwhelmed. They make me laugh and constantly remind me that I can do this, and together we do. Now I have a full-time job as a peer support specialist at NAVOS. I have come full circle. My first case manager is now my colleague. I get to walk alongside others on their journey to wellness. I try to offer hope because if I can move toward recovery, they can too. Thank you.
Wow. How about that? Thank you very much, Lisa. Tiffany, Courtney, you must be so very proud of Mom. Thanks, Lisa. Our next speaker is King County Prosecuting Attorney Dan Satterberg. Dan has served in the King County Prosecuting Attorney's Office for more than 3 decades. He was first elected to lead the office back in 2007 and was just re-elected on Tuesday evening by nearly a 75% margin. Through partnership with communities that are the most impacted by crime and his support for the many diversion programs that we have, he is deeply committed to reform of the criminal legal system. He has been a great partner in advancing behavioral health innovations in our region. Please welcome Prosecuting Attorney Dan Satterberg.
Thank you and good evening. I'm not sure what they wanted me to talk about when they invited me here, but I know what I want to talk about, and it has to do with a trip that I took about 3 weeks ago. Together with my son James, who's in the front row, I visited Vancouver, British Columbia, with the district attorneys of Philadelphia and San Francisco, Brooklyn, and Burlington, Vermont. And we went to a part of town that most tourists are told to avoid, the downtown east side. And what I saw there left a profound impression on me. I went there to see Vancouver's drug problem and the public policy approaches that they had developed to respond to it. And I thought I understood the issue. I understood the legal part and I understood the political part, but what I saw, I was not prepared for. You see, in the downtown east side of Vancouver, there are a number of historic hotels. They call them single-room occupancy. Hundreds of people live in these 200-square-foot rooms, and then many thousands more live on the streets and the alleys right outside of them. An estimated 16,000 people live in a 20-block area between Gastown and Chinatown, an area with very defined borders. It's the most densely populated neighborhood in North America. And in the downtown east side, there is entrenched poverty and associated untreated behavioral health crisis present on every corner with every person that I encountered. We saw open drug injections throughout the neighborhood on the street. We saw extreme poverty, extreme misery that you don't normally associate, especially with a progressive and affluent city like Vancouver. And there's also a legacy of racism and oppression. While First Nations people make up about 3% of Canada's population, they make up 35% of the population of the downtown east side. I saw scores of IV drug users all day long, every day, using drugs openly on the street. Now in Vancouver, a folded flap of drugs goes for about $15 Canadian. So does an act of prostitution. An injection of the drug lasts about 8 hours, so most users have to use at least 3 times a day to avoid the painful withdrawal symptoms. And it's fentanyl that has been the game changer on the downtown east side, as it has in the United States, a story that needs to be understood by all of us. You see, a kilo of fentanyl can be bought on the internet from China and sent to Vancouver for about $15,000. Repackaged into small flaps of individual doses, cut with things like powdered caffeine or even gypsum from wallboard, that investment of $15,000 can become $2 million on the street. And there's no way to know, if you've just purchased a flap of drugs, what's in it. You don't know the strength, you don't know what it is, and all over the downtown east side, there are warning notices put up about the drugs, the overdoses that happened yesterday from a particular batch. Those are posted along with dozens of missing person flyers. Throughout this neighborhood, loved ones were last seen there in this misery and were lost there as well. This year, 1,500 people will die in British Columbia from drug overdoses. It's a province of 4.7 million people. This summer, on a single day, 13 people died in Vancouver of drug overdoses. And 90% of the people who die of overdoses die alone. 80% of them are men. It was this context that's critical for a full understanding of what the notion of a supervised consumption site model is. And what I saw in the downtown east side of Vancouver was truly disturbing, but the best thing I saw was what was happening inside the supervised consumption sites, and in their cousin they call the overdose prevention sites. There was, in fact, nothing shocking about these sites at all. They were just people medical professionals, and peers who wanted to help other human beings reduce their suffering and increase their chances of living one more day. The first supervised consumption site in North America is called Insight, and it's still there, and it does spectrometer testing of drugs 3 days a week. And they have seen heroin almost entirely replaced by fentanyl and carfentanil, about 90% of what is sold. Now, language is important, and we were admonished not to call these safe consumption sites because there's nothing safe about buying an unknown substance on the street and putting it into your body. But they are supervised consumption sites. They alleviate suffering and they reduce the risk of death. They can also be gateways to medically supervised detoxification and a way out of the downtown east side. But primarily they exist to save lives because drug treatment does not work for dead people. And they told us that over and over again. It would be far worse on the downtown east side without the supervised consumption sites and overdose prevention sites. Not a single death has happened inside. The deaths happen instead on the streets, in the alleys, and in these small hotel rooms. It's because that fentanyl has taken over Vancouver that there is now more serious talk about prescription opiates. While this is a taboo subject in America, in the context of the downtown east side, this makes total sense. There's a place called the Crosstown Clinic that provides pharmaceutical-grade heroin substitutes to 140 people 3 times a day. Nobody dies there. Nobody has to commit a crime to stay well. Now, the Vancouver police long ago gave up arresting users and dealers of small amounts who are also users. They see drug users as people in a health crisis who need medical attention. The police focus their efforts Instead, the Vancouver police focus their efforts on trying to interdict the flow of fentanyl through the mail and to identify those people who are not drug users but are drug sellers, preying on the misery of their customers. Insight was the first supervised consumption site in Vancouver, but now there are more than 30 places run by peers. Most are called overdose prevention sites. They don't necessarily have nursing services, but drug users are encouraged to come in to inject in one of these places where they get clean works, a sterile place to use it, and someone to watch over them to make sure they don't die. Insight used to treat about 40 overdoses a month. Now they treat 40 a week. They also provide help with wound care and dental care. They help provide medically assisted detoxification and transitional housing. It can all happen right there inside Insight. Supervised consumption sites are not scary. They are a glimmer of hope in a sea of misery in this neighborhood. Now, here in King County, we face a potential initiative to ban the public funding of supervised consumption sites. That case has been argued in the state Supreme Court, and we're waiting to see whether or not there's going to be a ballot measure, whether there's going to be a campaign. And all I can say is that we all need to understand why these exist. We need to understand the context in which they exist. And while the United States Attorney General, whoever that might be right now, may have other distractions, they are the master of diversion, and they've already sent nasty notes to local prosecutors and editorials in the New York Times saying any public official who even thinks about opening a supervised consumption site will face the full weight of the federal law under the crack house statute. This is politics at its worst. They use fear, they use anger, they use the politics of dehumanization to drive a wedge in a community that is torn by drug addiction. And the people who vilify drug users and hold up the supervised consumption sites as a threat to our nation offer no alternative to death from overdose. People addicted to drugs, they're not having a party, they're not having a good time, they are living a miserable life. And they should be the subject of our compassion and our generosity. Now, in Vancouver years ago, there were opponents, just like the opponents that are here in Washington State. And they blame Insight for the drug crisis in the downtown east side. Let's be clear. They put the Insight in the downtown east side because of that neighborhood. Insight didn't cause the drug problem. They are just there to save lives. It's like blaming the hospital for the sick people who are there. If somehow we could tear the hospital down, that the sick people would go away. In Canada, the government and the health ministers have declared an emergency, but the people working on the street in downtown East Side don't see that as an emergency. They see this as their new normal. Why? They say, why would this stop anytime soon when you can invest $15,000 and make $2 million? And why wouldn't it happen here in Seattle, in Washington State? It's already come to America. You know, today in America and every day, 200 people will lose their lives to drug overdoses. Half of them will die from fentanyl overdoses. According to a Pew Trust study that was released last month, most of the people who will die alone in stigma and shame from an overdose that's both preventable and reversible. Washington State has seen some fentanyl. It represents about 9% of the drug overdoses that we had, drug overdose fatalities that we had in 2016. 9% makes us one of the lowest percentages in the United States. That's because most of our heroin comes from Mexico, and it's in black tar form, and it's hard to mix a fentanyl powder with black tar. But that's changing across our nation. Fentanyl, as I said, is now responsible for 50% of the overdose deaths in America. And if you go back east, to the Northeast, in Massachusetts and Maine, it's responsible for 85%. They've stopped even calling it heroin. There's no pretense that it's heroin. It's fentanyl, and it's killing people, and it's a national crisis that we have to come to grips with. Is the desperation of Vancouver's downtown east side, is that our future? Is it already here? Is it here in tents and encampments? Is it here on the streets? Is it here where people are using in stigma and shame throughout King County? I don't know. And I don't know if this is right for us, but I implore all of us to find out. This public health disaster is just a 4-hour train ride away. You can all see it. You can see what is there. But what I do know is it's time for us to shift our paradigm from one of law enforcement to one of harm reduction. As a response to this crisis, you see, every community across this globe, and certainly across our country, has a cohort of people who are vulnerable due to their substance use disorder, the behavioral health issues, homelessness, other things make them vulnerable. And every community has 3 choices about what to do with them, and only 3. You can ignore them, you can punish them, or you can help them. And it turns out that helping people saves lives. And it's cheaper too. Here's what I've come to believe. And those of you who've been through recovery know this. When we ask people with substance use disorder to change the way they think and the way that they act, we ask them to do very, very hard work. It's very hard work. It turns their life upside down. And when those of us who set policy are trying to deal with substance use disorder, with behavioral health disorder, we have to ask ourselves to change the way we think and the way that we act, to decide to lead with a harm reduction strategy, to see the value in human life, and to lead with love and compassion. We can do it. It's hard work for all of us. Now, we've started here in King County. I no longer prosecute in court possession of small amount of drugs by drug users because putting addicted people into courts that lack the ability to help them does more harm than good. And the King County budget that's going to be passed, that was proposed by the executive, that will be passed by the council very soon, appropriates an additional $3.1 million to help with the expansion of the LEAD program throughout King County, so that every police officer will have that as their first response instead of arrest. We can do this here if we're willing to do the hard work, because when it comes to substance use disorder, our approach should be more about help and less about handcuffs. And it's our time. It's our time to lead. We can change the way we think, the way that we act, the way that we respond in order to save lives. And I say we do it together, letting the medical professionals lead the way with an emphasis on the awareness of the humanity, the trauma, and the grief that is at the center of drug addiction. Let's get to work. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, addicts are not bad people trying to be good. They're good people trying to get well. Thank you, Prosecuting Attorney Satterberg. And once again, congratulations to you on your successful re-election. King County is indeed in good hands. Throughout my career, I've always championed the theme, the bright side of addiction is recovery. And now we're going to continue with several more stories of recovery, with introductions by members of our community whose lives have been touched by mental health and substance use challenges. I love coming to this event every year because I always meet new friends. And I'd like you to meet a new friend that I met just before we started tonight, Marcus Martinez. Marcus, come on up here, buddy. There he is.
There's a lot of you guys. Wow. Thank you, Neil. I'm Marcus Martinez. I'm 17. I'm also an alcoholic. I've been sober for 2 years. I go to the recovery school literally right around the corner up in Queen Anne. It's really cool. You guys should check it out. And I also owe my life to communities like this, right? Things like this, conversations like this is what saved my life, right? And I only have a minute to talk, so I'd really like to say thank you to all of you guys, right? Everyone up here, everyone who's talking tonight, and everyone who's in this room, right? But I'm pleased to announce our next speaker, Musa Abdul Shakur.
Good evening. I'm kind of nervous after that one speaker. Okay, let's do this. I was born Sean Lee Carlos Green in Sacramento, California in 1974. In the beginning, I had a pretty normal childhood. I was active in sports and did well in school. But everything changed at the age of 9. I found out that my father, who was Mexican, wasn't my father, and that my real father was African American and was dead. Up to that point, I had always believed I was half Mexican and that this man was my father. During that same time, I was sexually abused physically and emotionally. All of this led to an identity crisis. I felt isolated as the only African American in my family. I felt completely out of touch with a culture that was mine, but I didn't know. I ended up in a psychiatric facility. I began to rebel and got caught up with the wrong crowd. At age 10, I began selling and using drugs and got involved in a gang. At age 17, I had a son. I started using harder drugs and carrying a gun, and I graduated from juvenile detention to adult jail. My whole life, my mom was one of the only people who ever understood me. When I was 17, she died of liver failure related to substance use. I was devastated. Shortly after that, I was on my way to state prison. I was in and out of the criminal justice system for years. My longest stay in prison was 12 years and 9 months. During that time, I was sent to Western State Hospital for a competency evaluation. I was diagnosed with PTSD, schizophrenia, and bipolar disorder. While I was in prison, I converted to Islam. Although leaving a gang is extremely hard, I was finally able to get out. After being released from prison, I was living with paranoia. At one point, I ran to get away from imaginary people I thought were following me. I was scared and I jumped. I didn't realize how high up I was and shattered both my ankles when I landed. Since then, I've received both inpatient and outpatient care for mental health and substance use. For the first time, I opened up about the abuse and identity crisis I experienced in my childhood. One psychiatrist made a big difference for me. He told me that my experience wasn't far-fetched and that everyone's story is different. And that I could recover from my mental health symptoms. I also had a community corrections officer who believed in me and was focused on rehabilitation and not punishment. In the last several years, I've owned several small businesses. My journey has included 2 relapses, but I've been in long-term recovery for over a year now. I own and operate a janitorial business and clean commercial buildings. I'm very involved in the Muslim community, helping people connect with their history and culture. I love to read. I rent my own apartment where I live with my wife. I have an amazing relationship with my son. We're like Batman and Robin. And I'm a proud father of 8. My greatest aspiration is to start a nonprofit to help deter youth from gang involvement and end the cycle of intergenerational poverty. I'm working to make that dream a reality. Thank you.
Thank you, Musa. My name is Tracy Smith. I am in mental health and substance use recovery. As a peer bridger with King County Behavioral Health and Recovery Division, I am pleased to announce our next speaker, Brandon Sullivan.
Hello, my name is Brandon, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about my life. So I grew up in a close family. We spent a lot of time outdoors, on the water in our boat, and as a child I was really inquisitive. I was a good student, and I had plans to do something with my life. I started using drugs when I was a teenager for reasons that I'm still trying to understand, and it progressed for 6 or 7 years. When I was 20 years old, I tried heroin, and I became addicted really, really quickly. I completely lost control of my life, and at that time, my daughter had just been born. I couldn't take care of her. I lost my job, and I stopped talking to my family, and started living on the streets in downtown Seattle, where I stayed until I was 35. So every day on the streets for me was more or less the same. It was a cycle of withdrawal, sickness, getting high, and a frantic search for money to avoid the inevitable sickness that was coming. No, it's something that tore out every bit of self-respect and self-worth that I had until I felt nothing but hopelessness. I was in and out of prison, detox and treatment. I overdosed on heroin at least 5 times. Usually when I had just gotten out of jail or prison. One of those overdoses, the guy who I was with actually carried me to an ambulance. I woke up in Harborview, and I had brain damage. And over the next few months, I had to actually learn how to read again. So the only bright spots in my life during that period was the time I was in methadone treatment. Each time I did a little bit better. I could get a job and get off the streets and get some hope back in my life. Methadone gave me stability I needed and the courage to do something different. And without methadone, I would have had to make it through a month of withdrawal and depression. And for me, that route just never worked. And I tried it many, many, many times. So the last time I got on methadone in 2008, I finally changed to a point where I was able to get some of my self-respect and confidence back and transform my life for good. I decided to take a community college biology class, and shortly after I got into recovery, and I was absolutely fascinated with it, and becoming a scientist gave me a new purpose and identity. It took me 6 years of work, but I got a bachelor's degree in cell biology and became a microbiologist. Yeah, I became a microbiologist, which I'm really proud of. So I'm in graduate school right now, and I've even published research. And I might never have done any of these things if it weren't for methadone helping me to get into long-term recovery. So I'm proud of the 9 years of recovery that I have and my education, but I'm most proud of the person that I've become. I take care of my family. I always try and do the right thing. I have a positive attitude. My girlfriend and I actually got on methadone together in 2008, and we've been together for 12 years now. I'm close with my family again, and today I have a relationship with my daughter after 15 years of being apart. So the last thing I want to tell you is that, you never know what kind of person is underneath all of the misery that is substance abuse. Like for me, I just needed there to be help and opportunities when I was ready to change. And because treatment was there when I needed it, I've been able to make my dreams a reality. So thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you, Brandon. Hi, my name is Haley Mae Hallmeyer. I'm an older sister of triplets, and I'm 11 years old. And my dad is in active recovery from substance use. In our next video, we'll be showing a few people in our community about their recovery journeys. Thank you.
PTSD is a myriad of neurology and physiology and mental issues such as anxiety and depression.
I used to be chief technical officer of a small financial advisory, and I had Corvette and all that, and I lost all of that. And I was on the streets selling my body. And
I've been in and out of the criminal justice system a lot. In the time I was using, getting housing was a little difficult, permit applications ask these questions like, where did you last live?
All my friends and relatives are in China, so I face different new faces, new people. I felt very uncomfortable.
From having been homeless, from PTSD, from things that happened to me when I was in the Army.
My father, because my dad was in prison all my life, so growing up knowing that I had a father, gave me hope to one day I'll be able to meet him.
I was on the street and I couldn't get into housing because of my criminal history and because of my addiction history. And I got an owner to take a chance on me, and the day I got the keys to my apartment was the last day I ever used.
Going through several recovery programs such as NAVOS, mental health, and SOUND.
My counselor She believed in me more than I believed in myself and connected me with people that really helped lift me up when I couldn't lift myself up.
I want to thank Washington State for saving my life. The myriad of hospitalizations, the support groups.
I'm transgender and I got into an all-women's facility, and that was really validating.
It was Harborview, my therapist who was always with me. I had multiple hospitalizations, never gave up on me.
Until I realized it wasn't the drugs and alcohol, it was the mental. They had issues, family trauma, stuff that happened to them psychologically. Really, all they needed was a counselor or some type of love from a human being that could help them change.
I'm proud to own a car. I'm proud to go to work every day. I'm proud to have friends. I'm proud to be a sister. I'm proud to be a daughter.
When I became certified by the state of Washington as a peer support counselor, the day that I looked up and looked at the people milling around at the recovery cafe and realized that I cared about them.
I was appointed by the governor last year for the State Advisory Council for Homelessness. And I'm now a certified peer counselor and also a recovery coach.
How well I've done in school, and like perfect GPA 4.0, I'm like 100 credits in.
As I live in the senior house, it's about 10 families from China, but most of them don't speak English. In some way, I can help them. I'm useful for them.
There's been many a time that I've told my wife that I'm a work in progress. I'm not perfect.
Remember your light. It is inextinguishable.
I haven't ever done hard drugs or anything, So there's this kind of cliche idea that it's always that.
That is not a choice.
It affects everyone.
5 years ago, I'd probably be somebody sitting on the sidewalk that people just walk by, but like put me in a different environment and I can do well, I can excel, give me a chance.
I'm still me and I'm still valuable. And that I'm worth taking a chance on.
We're all just people, and we still have value. We still have value, and we can recover.
So thanks to everyone who told their stories in this video. And some of you phenomenal people are also within this room now. I'm gonna shift off the paper just a little bit. If it wouldn't have been for people like that in this video and all of you in the room, I would not be able to say what I'm finna say tonight. My name is Sharice Rhodes, and I am in recovery from mental health challenges. And with all that being said, I'm pleased to introduce our next speaker, Roliam.
First of all, I want to thank you, everybody here. Everybody is here, and here is my story. I was only 6 years old when the Khmer Rouge took over Cambodia in 1975. I remember seeing my dad go into the street. I remember watching him being beaten and killed. I was nearly dying of starvation myself. In 1979, I escaped to Thailand. On the way, I saw a lot of dead bodies on the road. I remember feeling scared that I would be killed by the soldier. When I was 12, I came to the United States. With my uncle, he yelled at me and beat me often. As a young adult, I finally reunited with my mother in Seattle, and I got an electronic assembly job. At first, I was happy. And then I met a woman, and we partied all the time. It was not a lifestyle that I was proud of and led to depression. The dark childhood memory and depression make me give up on my life. I overdosed on NyQuil, 24 sleeping pill, but I did not die. When I wake up, I feel like a ghost was inside me. I start to hear voices. And that day, I physically hurt my girlfriend and my friend. Someone called the police. I was arrested. I was in jail for 4 months. I was given medication so the voice would go away. The court referred me to a treatment program, but I never went. I stopped taking my medication, and the voice come back. One day, the voice told me to kill my sister. I told the voice that my sister, and that I did not want to hurt her. I couldn't sleep that night. In the morning, the voice told me to stab myself, so I did. I went to my sister's room for help. She called the police. They took me to Harborview, and I stayed at Harborview about a month, and then I was sent back to jail, briefly because I wasn't taking my medication. Before I even got out, my case manager came to see me twice. I was released to group home and later to my sister and her families, while I received medication and counseling at ACLS. I also have a peer counselor who are a great help to me. I dream of becoming a peer counselor like him. Thank you. Today, I'm doing well. ACLS provides me the tool to work on my mental illness and stay clean and sober. I am doing well because ACLS is a place where I meet people who look like me, people who care and respect me, and I'm now a peer specialist. I take my medication daily, and I have a place to stay. I'm doing better today because I believe in a higher power. I have a sister and a mom who support me, and I work on my recovery every day. Thank you so much.
Wow. Thank you very much to all of you for sharing your important stories of experience, strength, and hope. We are all inspired by your courage. The bright side of addiction and mental illness is indeed recovery, and the folks that you met tonight certainly embody that. And now our legislators will get a chance to respond to what they have heard tonight. Now, a lot of elected officials that I've known over the years have been in a 12-step program called On and On and On and On and On and On. Fortunately, they're not here tonight. In order to stay on track, we'd like to welcome your comments, and we ask that you please take about 1 minute each. And we'd particularly be interested to hear your thoughts about what you've heard tonight, or maybe earlier in the roundtable, if you're here for that, or your priorities around mental health or substance use recovery for 2019. And let's begin right here and kind of go around the room.
Again, I'm Tana Sen. Thank you all for sharing your stories. I think my biggest takeaway tonight is the importance of the peer support and the peer specialists. I'm thrilled to have Hero House now in Bellevue and Victoria, and look forward to supporting them. They work a lot on making sure that we can go upstream and help youth, in whether they're in school or even in early learning, get them social emotional learning skills, hopefully get school counselors, and make sure we address workforce issues.
It's so impactful every year to come to this event and to hear stories of recovery, and it's inspiring, but it's also a really important reminder to all of us, probably everybody here, that we can do better in the system that we have. We can build a system in this state that serves people to the best of our abilities, and it's going to require tough solutions and important solutions that can really help people, like the one that our prosecutor described to us that's taking place in Vancouver. We can really help a lot more people than we are helping today, but it's going to take guts, and that's what all of your stories, I think, will help the legislators on stage show when it comes to make tough decisions like supporting supervised treatment.
Ditto to that. Thank you all so much, all of you who shared your stories. So I am so deeply grateful. It really gives us the energy that we need, because we have a ton of work to do. And I am really, really looking forward to doing some hard work outside the legislature. I am the deputy director of the Downtown Emergency Service Center, and so I'm very familiar with a lot of the struggles that we see in our system, but I'm also very familiar with the amazing stories of turnaround and hope. And so I am working really hard on how we can bolster our professionals who are working in the behavioral health system, not only by making sure we provide enough resource, but by making sure that folks get the training and support that they need so they can do really excellent work. And I am most particularly focused on making sure that everyone who is living with behavioral health disabilities has access to the housing that is safe, healthy, and affordable that we all deserve to have access to.
So again, my name is Lauren Davis, and
You got a fan club.
and this is my 6th Behavioral Health Legislative Forum, not because I ever thought I'd be sitting up here, but because I'm a person who identifies as in recovery from mental health challenges, and because my life has been substantially impacted and shaped by the substance use disorder of loved ones, and because my day job is running an organization called the Washington Recovery Alliance, where I chase these fine people around and ask them to fund treatment and recovery. So just 2 things I want to say. The first is to Jim Vollendroff. The King County behavioral health system would not be close to where it is today without your capable hands leading it. And I can speak on behalf of the entire recovery community and say we are so grateful to you. Thank you.
Absolutely.
And the second thing I'll say is all of you and all of this is why I ran for office. And they elected me. Can you believe that? So I just, this is my #1 legislative priority, both mental health and addiction recovery. I'm really excited to get busy. I believe passionately and fervently in recovery, and I believe that when we provide people access to quality supports, they recover. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you again for having me. My name is David Frocht, State Senator, and I hope I will be in a position this year to help, in particular, with focusing on permanent supportive housing and other needs that were identified. And so you can count on me to work on that with all of our local officials and all of my colleagues here. And I would just say my takeaway from tonight is both from what our prosecutors talked about and the humanity of the people that are suffering that we have to remember, and the comment that was made that we have to remember, and I understand that there is somebody underneath the troubles that we see. And I thought that was a very poignant comment, and that is one that I will remember in the public policy decisions that I have the privilege of making. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would have thought after 2 years that I would remember to bring tissues to this event, and I forgot again, so I apologize. I don't really want to get into legislation, but I'm not myself in recovery, but I've lost a lot of friends over the years. And losing my friend in 2010 was one of the things that first made me want to run for office. And, you know, my most immediate family members that are in recovery have been in now for 8.5 years, so it's been a long time since I've been in Al-Anon rooms and A&A rooms and NA rooms. But every time I come here, I'm just so moved by your witness testimony and your stories of recovery. And it's just, I love you all, and thank you for sharing.
It's such an honor to be here and to be in this position to really take your stories back to Olympia and make sure that we continue to humanize the work that we're doing. What my biggest takeaway is to really make sure that we go from law enforcement to harm reduction, and that we continue to put pressure on our local communities to allow for overdose prevention sites and not to allow for the political rhetoric to win out. And I promise you that I may not be an expert in this field, but I promise you that I will not leave your side, and I will continue to lead on these issues and help those that are the experts.
So 15 years ago, I was the presider of this event.
Yeah, I remember that,
Neil,
Roger.
you do a much better job than I do. But I've been committed to this issue of behavioral health for a long time. Behavioral health has risen to the top priority for the entire legislature. As chair of the Public Safety Committee with jurisdiction over our criminal system, we talk too much about jail and police and crime. This has nothing to do with behavior that harms others. This is people who need to be healed rather than punished. I'm going to be working harder than ever to decriminalize mental illness, to decriminalize substance use disorders, and to divert those who are needlessly running afoul of the law and give them the help that they need.
Thanks, Roger.
Thank you, Bill Ramos here. And I think the simplest way I go to is just access. Access and access. In all of our communities throughout the state, not just in big places, but I have areas that are much more rural, and the rest of the state, we need access throughout the whole state, and that's the critical piece for me.
As the chair of the Community Development, Housing and Tribal Affairs Committee, and also Nicole has been great partner in that committee, as well as on the Capital Budget Committee. We will continue to work along with all of your support on increasing housing stock as well as affordability. And then also as an immigrant myself, I was 12 when I came to the United States a long time ago. I think some of the stories about cultural competency, self-identity, who are we in order so that we can be healthy no matter where our journey in life is, I think is very appropriate. So thank you so much for your stories.
So again, I'm Shelley Kloba, and I'm just finishing my first term, and when I was first campaigning for this office, I met a woman who told me, drug court saved my life. And I didn't know what I was going to do with that story at the time, but I told her I would keep it in my heart, in my mind. And I am very proud that it took 2 years to do it, but we got a bill passed that allows the drug court treatment account funds to be spent a little bit more broadly so that it includes more recovery support services. And I'm listening and hearing a lot about that is a really important piece of all of recovery, is to be able to do a diversion court when you're recovering from a drug issue. So, and I also know, hearing from some of you, some of the overlap between substance use disorder and mental illness, and I think it kind of cements that when we hear your stories. And then finally, just a real echo of, I think you can't make it any more crisp than prosecuting attorney Satterberg did. We can ignore, we can punish, or we can help, and that'll stay with me too. Thank you.
So many thoughts go through my mind when I hear these stories, and I want to thank you all for sharing your personal stories, because you are making a difference. You're making a better world by sharing your stories and helping us to empathize with this situation. I was sitting at the table earlier, and we got to talking about one of the bullet points was to expand access to behavioral health services. So I said, well, what's the process for expanding access? And he said, I think that means increased funding. So I said, oh, expanding access is code for funding. Okay, I get it now. So when we're talking about increasing funding, you know, there's no shortage of needs that absolutely should be funded in a civil society. So what I would like you all to take away from this is that the number one thing that you can do to help is to help us increase revenue in a progressive manner that doesn't impact most adversely those who can least afford it, and help us reform our tax structure so that we can get adequate revenue to fund all of these good issues. So thank you for helping us do that.
Thank you, everyone. I'm Senator Petty-Cooter, and I agree with Senator Palumbo. When I hear these stories, they're deeply moving and inspiring. And And the takeaways that I have from tonight are that, you know, we should never lose track of the humanity of the people who are suffering from substance use disorder or mental illness. And that we do need to return to the compassion that we should show our fellow human beings and understand that there's always hope, that they can recover, and they want that hope. That's what they want to do. And so, and I also appreciated what Prosecutor Satterberg said too, and he has said this before about there's 3 things you can do. You can ignore, punish, or treat, and only one of those 3 things works. And I'm committed to focusing on the one of those 3 things that does work. And I agree with Senator Hasegawa, it does require funding, and that's always, you know, the difficult part for us is that we don't have enough funding for the needs and the social programs that we all want our state to provide for the people of our state. So I'm also committed to reforming our tax structure, and that was a conversation that we had tonight at the table as well. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
Good evening. Again, my name is Sharon Tomico Santos from the 37th Legislative District. I first want to say thank you to everyone who shared your story, and for those of you who didn't get to come up and share your story in a public way, for sharing your story in smaller circles. The one word that I would lay on that exercise is courage. It takes a great deal of courage to share a story that is so honest and so gripping. I also want to shout out to ACRS and many of the other providers of culturally competent care, but ACRS in particular, not only because of the video of the young people that we saw, but because it leads into one of my commitments. ACRS's motto is hope and opportunity in many languages. We know that behavioral health issues strikes anybody. Doesn't matter what you look like, it doesn't matter how wealthy you are, it doesn't matter what your college degree is, it doesn't matter what country you were born in, and it affects all of us, all of our families. And so the biggest takeaway that I have, especially as the chair of the House Education Committee, is how important it is to make sure that we are getting every student on a right pathway to a career that may include serving your community, whether as a peer or in a professional capacity as a counselor or a psychiatrist or a psychologist or some other type of professional that serves in the behavioral health fields. I also want to conclude by saying it is about, you know, Michael Jackson had that great song, The Man in the Mirror. We all have experiences where behavioral health issues have touched our lives. And so on behalf of all of the families, I again thank the King County Behavioral Health Legislative Forum for your work. We know that these issues are touching and taxing on families as well. Today I have a grandson who is living with me, just moved in with me, who is also in recovery, managing his issues, and he's doing very well. Thank you very much. But we have to support the families as well. And so that is my commitment.
Well, thank you again, Representative Mike Pelliciotti from Federal Way. There you go. Thank you. Thank you, Federal Way. Look, I mean, while everyone is so kind to have the legislators sit up here, there is no question that the stars of this forum are those who presented today related to their stories of recovery. And I just want to take this moment so we all give a round of applause for everyone with the courage to come and speak to us today. So thank you all very much.
Tina Orwell. I want to start by again doing a shout out for Jim. You've been such a tremendous leader to us, and you've helped us on policies and partnerships, and I want to thank you for your service to our community. I also want to recognize Kelly Nomura, who I've worked with for many, many years, and you come very seasoned, very dedicated, and we look forward to working with you. The stories tonight, so incredibly powerful, so raw. You know, it is that reminder that mental health and substance abuse, it touches all of our lives, and the reminder that the trauma of many people who carry that pain, and that we need a kind and therapeutic response in all of our systems to really support people during the recovery. Some of the things I heard, I do a lot of work on suicide prevention. I work with UW Ford Front and my colleagues. We know suicide is one of the most preventable forms of death. And we really have been trying in the legislature to train professionals in this, as well as provide more resources in our K-12 and higher ed. But we really need to do more to support people working in the field who are struggling to support their own families. We need to do more around the training and the compensation, and I certainly want to tell you I'm dedicated to working on that, as well as the MET, the medically assisted treatment for people in the jails. We lose a lot of lives when people transition without those medications of assistance. So thank you for being here tonight, and certainly we'll remember all of your stories as we go into this next session.
Well, thank you again, Noelle Frame, State Representative for the district you are sitting in. Whoop, whoop. Reflecting on tonight, I think the thing that really sat with me is how much of the stories were rooted in folks' childhood. That so much of what's happening in their adult lives started as children, whether it was an identity crisis at 9 years old, our young lady at 11 who's got a parent in recovery, our friend from Cambodia that experienced atrocities in his childhood. It resonates with me because I had one of those childhood traumas. And for me, it was childhood sexual abuse from ages 5 to 10. And that turned into a little bit of self-medication in my 20s. Very invisible because I'm pretty functional. But it took me until my 30s to get to therapy and now I take psychotropic medication every day to deal with my depression. To me, I know that things start in childhood, and I'm so grateful for Representative Tonneson. We're going to bookend this for the work that she's done with the Children's Mental Health Work Group. She has handed that off to me, and I'm now the co-chair of the Children's Mental Health Work Group. And the things that we're doing this year, really addressing, as Representative Santos said, helping the families. We have had a group of parents that have had 21 meetings this year tackling the issue around parent-initiated treatment so they can help their children that are in the throes of mental illness and substance disorders, get them the help that they need. We also have a pilot at our educational service districts so that our educators who see these kids every day and may recognize some of the symptoms can help the families better navigate and get to the services. You are all so, so courageous. It's why I tell my story too. Thank you for this evening. It's been an amazing experience.
Thank you for your openness. A big round of applause for our panel tonight, our legislators. And legislators, I invite all of you to share what you have heard here tonight. And I challenge you next year to bring a colleague who should be here.